On the day of our divorce, my ex-husband held our chubby son tightly and pointed at me, snarling, "Don't even think about getting custody of our son." I calmly replied, "Of course not." After all, he wasn't my biological child. My biological daughter, whom I had carried for 10 months, was waiting for me at home with my new boyfriend. When I was 8 months pregnant, I discovered that my husband was having an affair with our former nanny. To outsiders, we appeared to be a perfectly happy family. I believed this too, which is why I had followed our plan and gotten pregnant soon after our marriage. Now, Caleb was snoring beside me. I looked at the Snapchat message on his phone screen. "Caleb, our baby kicked me again today." The profile picture of the sender looked familiar. When I opened it, it was indeed someone I knew, Fiona, who had worked as our live-in nanny for a year. Silently, I marked the message as unread and exited Snapchat. Sure enough, Caleb's phone had 2 systems, and he must have forgotten to switch before going to sleep. I put the phone back on his bedside table and laid down, but sleep eluded me. The next morning, I said to Caleb, "I'm planning to visit my dad today. I've been worried about him since Mom passed away." "All right, honey. Be safe," Caleb replied, not even looking up as he tied his shoelaces, let alone offering to drive me. "I might have to work late today, so I'll be back late. If it's convenient, why don't you have dinner at your dad's place?" I agreed and left the house. The first thing I did was call my father's housekeeper. "James, could you please find some trustworthy people to keep an eye on Caleb tonight? It would be great if they could get photos of whoever he meets." After hanging up, I felt some of the heaviness in my heart lift. Since becoming pregnant, I had given up my work to focus on the baby and our home. I had almost forgotten my decisive days in the business world. "Caleb, if you dare to betray me, be prepared to face the consequences." When James heard I was coming home, he insisted on sending a car to pick me up despite my protests, and even waited for me at the door himself. "James, you really didn't have to. I'm pregnant, not made of glass," I said as I walked in. "Is Dad in his study?" "The master has been waiting for you since he heard you were coming back," James replied cheerfully, escorting me to the study before heading to the kitchen to arrange lunch. "Lyra, what's wrong? Why such an urgent visit?" Dad asked before I could even sit down. "Dad, I want to divorce Caleb. He's cheating on me," I said, my voice trembling without me realizing it. How pathetic, getting worked up over such an unworthy man. I mocked myself internally. Okay, to my surprise, Dad didn't ask any questions. "I heard you ask James to have someone tail Caleb. Is there anything else you need help with?" Dad's decisive response helped me regain my composure. I shared the plan I had formulated during my sleepless night. "The baby is already 8 months along, so termination is out of the question. Besides, this is my child too, so I've decided to give birth, but I absolutely cannot let Caleb have custody. For now, I don't want to deal with anything else. I just want to focus on having a healthy pregnancy and delivery. Once I've recovered, I'll find the right moment to file for divorce. I don't believe Caleb only started his affair with Fiona after she came to work for us, so I'd like to borrow a few of your people to investigate Fiona's background. Also," I took a deep breath, "once I've recovered, I want to return to work at the company immediately." Days passed uneventfully, as I focused all my energy on myself and the baby. I silently reminded myself that any revenge could wait. Maintaining a stable mindset was crucial. I couldn't let 2 despicable people ruin my life and my baby's. On my due date, I was awakened by contractions. I knew it was time. I looked at the other side of the bed. Caleb had left at some point. Pushing aside the feeling of irony, I dialed for an ambulance. The delivery process was unexpectedly difficult. Perhaps the baby knew she would face her parents' separation upon arrival, and was reluctant to leave my body. I was nearly broken by a pain I had never experienced before. Disregarding everything else, I screamed, "I don't want to give birth anymore." All the resentment I had suppressed for months was unleashed by this pain, and tears streamed down my face. Through the haze, I thought I heard the delivery room door open. A man stood beside me. "Is it Caleb?" I wondered hazily. "Is he worried about the baby?" "Lyra, I'm a friend of your father's. My name is Dr. Lachlan Frost," came a steady male voice, completely different from Caleb's. "I'm here, and you'll be fine." Dad was really thinking ahead, arranging a doctor for me in advance. In a daze, I followed Dr. Frost's instructions and pushed. Finally, after an intense bout of pain, I heard a baby's cry. "Look at your baby, doctor," Frost said, holding up the cleaned infant. "It's a little princess." I gazed hungrily at my daughter's bewildered face, the pain seemingly vanishing. "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy will settle accounts with your father soon." Although the delivery wasn't easy, both the baby and I were in good condition and were moved to a regular ward. Exhausted, I fell into a deep sleep after the nurse assured me my daughter was healthy. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of footsteps. Opening my eyes, I saw a woman standing by my daughter's crib. I was about to call for help when the moonlight illuminated her face. It was Fiona. I immediately fell silent, curious to see what she was up to. She lifted my daughter out of the crib. Then, carefully, she took a baby boy out of the carrier she was holding and placed him in the crib. After that, she wrapped my daughter securely and prepared to leave the room. That beast. Rage surged through me, and I wanted nothing more than to flay her alive. How dare she try to switch my daughter? Thinking back to those Snapchat messages she sent Caleb, I realized the baby in the crib must be her son. I wanted to stop her but held back. Fiona wanted her son to take my daughter's place, to live a life of comfort and adoration. If I exposed everything now, she would face at most a few days of administrative detention. No, that would be too easy for her. Realizing this, I forced my still aching body to follow Fiona after she left with my daughter. Fiona skulked around, eventually reaching the entrance of the infectious diseases department. When no one was around, she placed my daughter in a hidden corner. I could barely contain my hatred for Fiona. The infectious diseases department? What kind of place was that? Patients with tuberculosis, syphilis, even HIV were treated in that ward. Fiona's intentions in leaving my daughter there were clear. Just as I was about to rush over and retrieve my daughter, a hand held me back. I turned to see Dr. Frost. "Go back and rest. I'll handle this," he said. He must have been following me and understood the situation. "I'll take your daughter directly to another ward and have someone trustworthy look after her." I collected myself, realizing this was the only way to avoid alerting Fiona. I made my way back to my room, avoiding people. Back in the room, I looked at the baby boy sleeping soundly in the crib, and a chill crept into my heart. The child was innocent, but since his mother was willing to give him up, I wouldn't feel guilty about using him to torment her. That night, I received a message from my father. He said my daughter had been checked and was fine, and he was with her in another room. I named my daughter Isla. Caleb finally showed up at the hospital on the second day after I gave birth, claiming he had an urgent business trip. I neither complained nor showed enthusiasm, making him think I was still angry about his absence. He was attentive during my hospital stay. A few days later, the nurse informed me that both the baby boy and I were in good health and could be discharged. It was then that Caleb remembered. "We haven't named our son yet. You choose." "I'm fine with anything," I said, showing little interest. Caleb, however, was enthusiastic. "Then let's call him Xander. We can call him Xan for short." I nodded, wondering if Caleb knew that Fiona had switched our babies. Back home, I said, "Honey, let's hire a nanny like before. I'm still not feeling well after giving birth, and the baby needs care." I think Fiona, our previous nanny, was quite good. Caleb looked at me in surprise. "Hiring a nanny is fine, but why suddenly insist on Fiona?" "It's not that I insist on her, but she worked here for a year, so she'd be better than other nannies," I said matter-of-factly. "But I heard from other families she worked for that she recently had a miscarriage. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for her to take care of you," Caleb explained. I felt reassured. It seemed Caleb had been fooled and didn't know about the baby switch. "Well, honey, why don't you send her a message and ask? If she's willing, let her come. If not, we can't force her," I said. Watching Caleb agree and take out his phone, I knew Fiona wouldn't pass up this opportunity to care for her own son and be close to Caleb. Sure enough, just as I had predicted, Fiona arrived the next day with her bags packed. As soon as she entered, before even taking off her shoes, she picked up Xander, cooing lovingly. "This baby is so sturdy, and his features are so handsome." "Yes, it took me a long time to give birth to him," I replied casually. I saw Fiona's face freeze for a moment. I felt a secret thrill. I said directly, "Please help me take care of the child. I'm going to visit my father, and I'll be having dinner there too. Would you mind making dinner as well?" After getting out of the car at home, I saw James coming to greet me as usual, and went straight to the point. "Where's Isla?" "Dr. Frost and the master are both with her." James smiled kindly. "What's Lachlan doing here?" I had some questions. Still, I followed James to the bedroom. In the bedroom, Dad and Lachlan were looking at the baby in the crib. Dad was muttering, "She looks exactly like my Lyra when she was little." "Dad, Dr. Frost." I greeted as I entered, then looked at my dad, clearly asking, "What's Lachlan doing here?" "Lyra, Lachlan comes from a medical family, and he's a skilled doctor. I trust him, so I asked him to come check on Isla occasionally," my dad explained cheerfully. He then said to me, "Isla is asleep. I've asked someone to watch her here. Let's talk in the study." "No need, sir. I'm fine staying here," Lachlan replied. I gave him a curious look. This man was being overly attentive, wasn't he? After sitting down in the study, my father took out a stack of documents. "I was worried about your emotions fluctuating too much in late pregnancy, so I didn't show you these investigation reports earlier. They were all done by people from the company, so you don't need to doubt their authenticity." He spread the documents on the table. "After you've read them, I'll support whatever decision you make." I picked up the investigation report and started reading quickly. Sure enough, Fiona and Caleb had known each other since high school. They were from the same rural area and had maintained contact even during the period when I was dating and married to Caleb. Caleb had even been sending Fiona a substantial amount of money every month. The night I discovered his affair, when he said he had to work overtime, he was actually going to see the pregnant Fiona. After finishing, I thought I would be furious, but I felt surprisingly calm. I asked, "The money he gave to Fiona, was it his own, or from his company?" Caleb currently worked as a financial director at a foreign company. Although his position wasn't very high, everyone treated him with respect because of my father's influence. "He's not bold enough to do that. It's all his own money," my father replied. "Then it's malicious transfer of marital property," I said, putting down the evidence. I told my father, "I want to recover first, then start working at the company. If I don't have a source of income when we divorce, Caleb might try to take Isla away." "All right," my father agreed immediately. "Tomorrow I'll have my secretary find someone to mentor you at the company. By the way, I heard from James that Fiona has returned to your house as a nanny. Is Caleb really that brazen?" "I suggested it, not him," I said, smiling genuinely. "Dad, I think it's better for a child to be cared for by their birth mother." The days that followed at home were incredibly satisfying. I not only refused to get up at night for breastfeeding, citing discomfort as an excuse, but also had Fiona prepare formula for Xander. I didn't bother with any of the baby's needs, simply enjoying my days eating and drinking to my heart's content. I would occasionally visit my father's house to see Isla, growing more and more attached to her as her features became more defined. I also often encountered Lachlan when he came to check on Isla, and we gradually became familiar with each other, even adding each other on Snapchat.